Raider Nation, I am back. Eddie Paskal here, back in the Beat Laboratory at the Intermountain Health Performance Center. And thank you for hanging out with us for another episode of Upon Further Review, brought to you by the good people at Coors Light. And as I've said, I've returned. Nothing's really gone on. Very quiet here in the building. Not much to discuss. Kind of business as usual as we get ready for the combine, blah, blah, blah. I kid. It has been really busy, and in order to kind of delve through everything, in order to kind of dissect everything that's happened since I've been gone, we have friend of the program, the great Jesse Merrick from News 3LV, who, by the way, before we get rocking, just did round of applause. Isaiah, make sure we put the applause signal or the applause sound underneath that. Round of applause for keeping the ship afloat while I was gone. Awesome job. It was really, really cool. I know I've told you a bunch of times, like, it's so cool to kind of like step back for a little bit and see how someone else does the show and kind of get their 2 cents and kind of, see how they like to do the dance. And you did a hell of a job. You, Isaiah, Angelo, everyone here on the back end in the studio just did a great job, and it was really cool. It helped me sleep a little bit easier for the 90-minute stretches of sleep that I got over the past 6 weeks, knowing that everything here is operational. So Jesse Merrick, round of applause. You did a great job. And man, we gave you a lot to talk about, didn't we?
Dude, heck yeah, you did. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I'll slip you the 20 that I promised you after giving you all the kind words. I thought it was a 50, bro.
You're getting cheap now.
Hey, no, we got it on recording before we got going, dog. But no, hey, look, definitely no shortage of things to talk about. That's for sure. It was a fun offseason, man. I mean, obviously, look, this isn't the song and dance you want to go through every offseason with coaches and stuff, but like an intriguing offseason nonetheless, with plenty of things to talk about. So, and that's the fun part, because I think this is the time for fans and everything like that too to really be positive and kind of look towards the future and kind of dissect and everything. So now it's our chance to like really dive into it all and figure out what the heck these guys are going to do in terms of molding this franchise going forward.
Yeah, and I think like for me, obviously being, for the first time in a minute, right, on the outside looking in at everything that's been going on here, it was really, really cool, I think, for me. And let's just start with the big one, right? And I do want to talk about a friend of the program, Eric Allen, and the Hall of Fame thing, and we will get to that, I promise. But I think for me, it was like really interesting kind of just to see, as like a sports media consumer for the past month and a half, just the way the conversation surrounding the Raiders changed from when I left. And I think the last day that I was in this building was, I think it was New Year's Day. It must have been New Year's Day, because New Year's Day, I'm getting in my ear, because that's right, because I saw Oregon humiliate themselves on the TVs in our studio, but I digress. But really between Jan 1 to as we record here today, a day before Valentine's Day, the conversation has changed in so many ways. And obviously, when I left, there hadn't been a head coach change. There hadn't been a general manager change. Now there was. Now Pete Carroll, John Spytek here in the mix. But I think for me, again, seeing how the national pundits, and I think it's also kind of important just to like put everything in perspective. It doesn't matter what Rap Sheet says. It doesn't matter what what Adam Schefter says. It doesn't matter what Schrager and all those guys have to say. Albert Breer, right? Like, we like them to be positive and to be excited about everything going on in the building, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. But it was really interesting to kind of just see the tone and tenor of those kind of remarks and those change and the conversation surrounding everything that the Raiders have going on over the course of the past 6 weeks. Pete Carroll is in. John Spytek is in. Going through, having a chance to, again, kind of be like a, fanboy for a little bit, going back and watching the pressers. I mean, the two things to me that stood out, Jesse, and I know I'm preaching the choir here, and I know you guys have probably talked about it a lot. Competition is going to be the name of the game here. Everything that the Raiders do in 2025, competition. And I think there's also going to be, I don't want to say a return, and I know you'll do a better job of kind of describing this than I'm about to, but it feels like there's going to be maybe a little bit of return's too strong of a word, but maybe a reinvigoration or a re-emphasis on the height, weight, speed guys, right? On guys that are just big, fast, strong human beings, and they're going out and playing football. So again, kind of the floor is yours. Like, when you saw Pete and you heard from Spytek about kind of what their mission, their thesis, their mode of operation is going to be here with the silver and black. Like, what kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, look, I mean, for me, throughout the whole process, you're wondering, tying all these different names to the Raiders and everything like that. And then when it eventually comes down that it is Pete and Spytek, like you said, nationally, it gave that kind of credibility back to the organization, which was lost for some reason, nationally in terms of the way the team had been covered. And so I, for one, like you said, I know it doesn't matter what a lot of the national pundits and a lot of those people have to say, but like it's still great when there's more positivity out there around the team, when there's more intrigue from those national guys, and when the Raiders are getting more attention on the national scale. It makes it more fun. And you can just tell that these guys, with bringing Pete in, are bought in a little bit more to the Raiders and what they're kind of going to be doing here. And so for me, again, I liked both hires, honestly. I think with Pete, he's that adult in the room, comes in and he said, the thing that struck me from his introductory press conference is he said, I don't do things the same way that everybody else does, or something along that vein. And, or I don't do things like everybody else. And I was like, isn't that the Raider way? You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like the way the Raiders should be. And so to me, I was like, all right, sweet. Like match made in heaven. Like you see how fun it was back in the day when Pete was at USC, and just the energy that was surrounding that program. And I can see him bringing that to Vegas. And then with Spytek, a guy that's come in and has flipped the roster around in Tampa, going from one of the oldest in the league to one of the youngest in the league, and still being a very competitive team, making the playoffs every year, winning the division, all that stuff. So in terms of where this franchise was at the time, with a lot of the turmoil that had surrounded the team, like just being blunt about it, to be able to get two guys like that is massive to me.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head a little bit there, Jesse, where you look at Pete in particular, and I'll lump Spytek in with this as well, but like it just feels like there's an air of been there, done that in a good way, in a non-arrogant way, right? There's a level of comfort there. There's a level of maturity, I think, too. And I also think that there's a level of understanding of like, this is how it's supposed to be in the NFL. Like, I don't think there's going to be any kind of, learning on the fly or developing on the job right now. And look, right, like the Raiders that we see week 1 of next year will hopefully and probably be different than the Raiders we see week 17, week 18. But I say that in the sense of like, there's not going to be like figuring out a philosophy, right? There's not going to be kind of, maybe we tweak this in the schedule or we tweak that, right? Like there is an understanding of how to do it. There is an understanding of what it takes to be successful, because you look at Pete, right? Like this is a guy who has just won, baby. Like literally, like he has just won everywhere that he has been. And so I think like there will naturally kind of be, as there should, kind of that initial kind of, I don't want to say uncomfortability, but that newness to it, right? And there's going to be times where you're like, oh, this is a little bit different than we've seen in the past. And that is a good thing. And I'm excited to kind of see what his vision looks like. I'm excited to get a chance to talk to him for the first time at the Combine here in a few weeks, right? Because like I said, like I was fully disengaged watching on YouTube like everyone else. So it'll be kind of exciting to get a feeling for what he is and what he's about. And I'm really stoked to kind of just go on this new adventure. And I was joking, I have a buddy who works for the artist formerly known as the Pac-10, Pac-12, whatever we're calling it now, the Conference of Champions. And he goes, dude, you guys are just, securing all of these Pac-12 legends now, because as you would imagine, when the news of Chip Kelly's triumphant arrival in the desert hit, again, this is kind of funny because like I have no idea, right? Like when these things like usually happen, like not to pump my chest a little bit, but I kind of know what's going to be happening. For all these, completely off, right? Like I had no idea. So I'm at the gym, right? And zzz, 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 and I'm like, what's going on? Zzz, zzz. And it was just like, as you imagine, the Oregon faithful is just blowing me up, right? I have my buddy from the Pac-12, and everyone's like, he's here, he's coming. And so I think for me, like outside of the initial, like, oh, the greatness of Chip Kelly is coming, right? Oregon Eddie is fired up. Like, I think for me, what I'm really excited about in terms of this hire is the fact that Chip, like, we are a long ways away. Like, I will age myself now, Jesse Merrick, right? Like, we are a long ways away from the 2009 Oregon Ducks who are going 5 wide and snapping the ball every 4.5 seconds, right? Like, Chip, as most of us have grown, he's grown, matured, evolved. So the offense that we saw at Ohio State, oh, God, the offense that I saw at Ohio State in early January, like that looks a lot different than what we saw 15 years ago, right? And so I think for me, the fact that Chip has shown this ability to be multiple, this has shown this ability to evolve, to change, to kind of morph into what the NFL needs him to be, like, this guy is just a guru offensively. It doesn't matter if you're going 5 wide, 12 personnel, 13 personnel. It doesn't matter, right? Like, this is a dude who everywhere he has gone has put points on the board. And so I think to have kind of that mad scientist in the lab here with the Raiders, huge W for the Silver and Black.
Yeah, dude, 100%. And that's the thing is, I think the fact that he has evolved is massive. And it's easy for a coach to come out and say, "Oh, I've evolved," and but you can see it.
Yeah,
in his scheme when you turn on the tape. It no longer is. Just go ahead and look at the tape from his Oregon days, and then go look at Ohio State. in terms of just the huddle alone.
They're two different offenses. Yeah, they're two different offenses. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and so I think it's cool to be able to see a guy like that really did adapt to the personnel that he had and the times, of where things have gone. It is much more of that slower approach. You're lined up in 12 personnel so much more often than you would have been back then in those days at the Oregon days. And then you got to see him too when he was at UCLA, kind of incorporated a bunch of different things. Like they did run a lot of no huddle, but then he got real interesting and creative with a lot of the formations that he brought to the table. The running game that he's coming out here with is going to be a lot of fun to watch because they do it at so many different looks. They've got some like offset I formations. They've got some T formations where they got like 3 dudes lined up in the backfield as blockers with the running back behind them. Like there's going to be so many different things that are like interesting to watch how he matches up. Like he's a guy that's not afraid to run into a stacked box because he'll use that numbers game to his advantage. Obviously, a lot of this is going to depend on what quarterback they do get, so obviously in terms of RPOs and how involved the quarterback is going to be in that will depend on who they get. But like this is a guy that's shown he can adapt his scheme to different styles of quarterback over the years. And also, too, I think another positive in this, look at it this way. The guy had a head coaching job at UCLA, chose to leave that job to go to Ohio State, to take a pay cut, to just concentrate on ball and to coach football. And now he's come to the NFL, and he has said he just wants to coach ball. He doesn't need to check that box off or anything like that to be a head coach again. If that comes for him at some point later down the road, heck yeah. But it seems like this is a dude that just wants to call offense and score points, which is massive because it's a guy that now can just be laser focused, like you said, hop in the lab and concentrate on the one thing that he has shown he is elite at.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about, an offense evolving, Jesse, but like you look at Chip and kind of his ethos, like he's evolved too. Like you hit the nail on the head where you go, this is a dude who was a head coach at UCLA, right? This is a guy he's had stops in the NFL, and he got to the point, I think all of us get to that point where you're like, you know what, man? We heard from Jalen Hurts all over the weekend. You want to keep the main thing, right? And for him, the main thing 100%. Is going out and scoring points. The man loves touchdowns. The touchdowns heal him. They fuel him. That's all he wants to do is go out there and put points on the board. And I think, we talked about the different, variations of this offense, the different kind of wrinkles that we'll see. And I think that to me is going to be one of the more, I don't even want to call it like under the radar things that you and I will be able to look ahead to during training camp. But like, what is this offense going to look like? As we sit here today on February 13th, you could tell me that this offense would look 9 different ways, and I would believe all of them. So I think for me, as we go through the offseason program and kind of seeing and learning what this offense is going to be like is going to be really exciting. But, I'm excited that he's just committed to this offense, right, wanting to do it the right way. There's still so many questions that we have to have answered. Obviously, the biggest question that we will spend a lot of time talking about in between now and week 1 is the quarterback situation. Who is going to be the man under center for Chip Kelly's offense? There's going to be a ton of time to talk about that. But at the end of the day, like, you have the guy that you want in that seat. And I think that's be really big for the 2025 Las Vegas Raiders. And I think equally as big, though, Jesse, equally as important is what's happening on the defensive side of the football with friend of the program, Patrick Graham, coming back, right? Like, again, from my perspective, right, over the past 6 weeks, you see Patrick interviewing here, interviewing there. Oh, Schefter says he's got interest from this team and that team. The fact that Patrick decided to come back, right, I think you can't really overstate how important that is for the Raiders. You can't overstate how important that continuity is because in 2025 in the best way is going to be a year of a lot of new. There's going to be a lot of new, shiny things. But to have that defense, and let's not get it twisted, right? Like, you and I are still of the belief that if everyone on that defense was healthy a year ago, that's going to be a pretty darn good defense. Now, obviously, things happen. Guys get hurt. Raiders are bit by the injury bug in just the gnarliest way. But I still believe at my core that Patrick Graham, when he's got his dudes, is capable of putting together an elite defense. And so for me, the fact that he's coming back and there'll be continuity on that side of the ball, especially we look at some of the guys on our free agent list, Jesse, guys that are due to get paid somewhere, guys that are going to want to be having a little, what's the word I'm looking for, a little familiarity maybe in their next football home. The fact that Coach Graham is staying here, I think is huge for the Raiders.
Couldn't agree more with, honestly, everything you said about PG coming back. I mean, just from the continuity standpoint, like, think about over the years amongst all the different change. Anytime we talk to Max Crosby, he's like, look, I just want to win. And I want some like consistency. Okay, well, he gets that now in Patrick Graham, and a guy that has shown he can have a superstar in Max Crosby have consistent success, healthy or not, honestly, because Max was still effective even when he had the bum ankle there. But so having Patrick Graham come back, he has that familiarity. He knows what he can do with Max. Max knows him. They're on the same page. He's not having to learn a new defense. That just from that singular person from the face of your franchise, massive. But then you add in, like you said, all the different free agents and everything like that. A lot of the guys on that side of the ball, Robert Spillane in particular, has had his best years of his career playing with Patrick Graham. Nate Hobbs is another guy that's been moved around a lot, using the blitz game a lot. I've talked about it anytime you and I jump on here, how much I love Nate Hobbs as a blitzer when they use him in that way, and the versatility that he provides and how he can kind of move all over the place. And then look, we'll see what happens with Malcolm Kuntz. You talk about the injuries. I don't want to boil it down to one guy who we didn't really have a chance to see when he was really on that upswing. But man, that's a guy that I really do think it killed this defense when they lost him. You heard AP talk about it towards the end, that it was really a big gut punch, when Kuntz went down, because everybody felt what he was going to become. They were seeing it in practice, all these different things. And him opposite of Max, having that other year to be able to develop and really kind of come into his own was going to be massive. Then you go and lose a linchpin right in the middle there, in terms of Wilkins. So your defensive line gets decimated. But then still, even amongst all the injuries, when you go look at it, you lose, 5 starters to long-term injuries. The back half of the season, week 15 on, if I remember right, they were top 10 in points allowed, per game. That's massive to be able to do that, not only for the depth pieces, but just hey, look, we're going to keep playing. Our scheme's going to go out there. I just think, again, when healthy, Patrick Graham has shown that he can create an elite defense, a top 10 defense. And the progression was there. Year one, not the greatest. Year two, it was a top 10 defense. Then obviously this last year dipped down because there's so many injuries. I can't wait to see what happens with when they inject more guys, more talent, more everything into this defense. But two, hopefully health, is maintained, and we can really see what this guy can do. Now with another group here coming in, and another year of a Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins, which we were kind of robbed of early on in the year.
100%. And this is the way that I've kind of looked at it over the past couple of weeks as the coaching staff has kind of been final. I guess it was technically finalized earlier this week, but in terms of kind of those big pillar type of positions, there's a lot of really talented, capable dudes in the NFL, right? In terms of the coaching ranks. You can go out if you're Pete Carroll and you can make a good hire, right? You can hire, quarterback coach X, or you can hire DB coach Y, and you can have good hires. You can build a really nice staff, right? There are no shortage of those kind of guys. I think when you look at Patrick Graham and you look at Chip Kelly, those are great hires, right? That is a step above a good, solid hire. And so I think if you're Pete Carroll coming in here, wanting to kind of put your stamp on what the Raiders are going to be about, well, I think the best way to start that is crushing the hiring process. And he certainly has done that. Tom McMahon also back in terms of my beloved special teams crew. But again, I think there's a distinction that we need to make between good hires and great hires. And the Raiders have certainly made some really great hires over the past couple of weeks. So I think if you're a fan of this team, right, if you're a fan of everything that the Silver and Black are going to have cooking in 2025, you have to be heartened, right, by what you have seen from Pete and the crew. But I think another thing that I really enjoyed about what Pete did is we got some familiar faces back in the mix. Friend of the program, Greg Olsen, my guy, is back. Ole rides again, which is so great, man. Outside of being, I will be honest, maybe my favorite coach that we've ever had here. I'll put Ole top 2. I'm not going to do my guy Nick Holtz dirty like that. But in terms of being top 2, one of the coaches that we've ever had here, Ole, the vibes are incredible, the hair is incredible, but he's a hell of a coach too, right? And so I think that you look at a guy like Ole who's gone to all these places, there's a reason that he keeps getting calls, right? There's a reason he's been in the NFL as long as he has. And so for Ole to have the opportunity to work with the quarterbacks, to work with obviously work with Pete Carroll and work with Chip on that side of the ball, really, really exciting. Happy to have Chip back. And then another friend of the program, the great Marcus Robertson back in action, the DB coach. And I will, again, age myself a little bit here, Jesse, but people forget, and I'm sure someone brought this up over the past, however many days, but when Charles Woodson came back to the Raiders and he had that Pro Bowl year before he ultimately retired and ascended into the football heavens, it is crazy. You'll have to go back and check how many times he brought up Marcus Robertson as being so key for his development during that stage of his career. This is a guy who is at that point, if Charles never played a snap of football again, first ballot Hall of Famer, right? Not even close,
100%.
100%. And he's still at that point in his late 30s learning, honing his craft. And he said a lot of that was because of M-Rob. So to have those guys back in particular, really, really good. Joe Woods, also another guy that we have some familiarity with in terms of the silver and black. But to have these kind of new faces in here, to kind of, we talked about, mix that new with some familiar, I think really, really exciting for Pete and the crew.
Yeah, no, I would agree 100%, man. And I think just kind of like all-encompassing and kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, like with Pete, I love the fact that he is willing to go and go for guys that he doesn't have experience with, but then also gel that and mix that with people he does have experience with. You go and bring a guy like Patrick Graham back, who you haven't worked with before, but obviously has the respect of a lot of people in this building. Like that just shows, like, obviously there's a maturity as a coach. Like, I'm not trying to say like that's a newsflash. Like, we know Pete's a mature coach. But like, you go and bring a guy like that back where you're like, hey, I'm not worried about the fact that like this guy has been here and he's been in the head coaching discussions for so long and all this different stuff. He's like, he's just a good coach and he's going to come back and kind of continue that progression that he was on. Then you go in and bring on a guy like Chip Kelly, who, had interviewed for the job previously, but he goes and looks at, just the success that he has had in the league and bringing back guys that have been former head coaches in the league as well. And then you mentioned Ole, like that's a guy that has been an offensive coordinator in this league, obviously with the Raiders for quite some time, and has familiarity with not only the building and a lot of the folks on the staff and some of the players still on the roster and things like that. And so he's comfortable like here in this city, and knows what this organization is about. So I think that's big as well. But just from like a simple, I guess what I'm trying to get at here is like, Pete's not afraid to make like the right move. There's so many times there's like ego involved.
Yep.
Like look back to his time in Seattle when he goes and starts for us. They had just paid Matt Flynn a massive amount of money, and then they go and throw the rookie in there because they believed what their eyes were telling him. And I think that's kind of what Pete has done with assembling this staff. And I think Pete and John, because obviously they're working together throughout this process, but I think they've just sat back and been like, hey, look, let's believe what our eyes are telling us about a lot of the different guys that they've added this staff. So I think it's huge to be able to do that and bring back the many of the names that they did. I think another one that's going to be big is Rob Leonard coming back on the defensive line.
Yes.
Again, the familiarity, not only with Max, but if they're able to bring Kuntz back and then Christian Wilkins, like that's another guy that's well liked and has been there and has a lot of history with a lot of guys on that D-line, and has helped a lot of them progress as well.
Well, what's interesting too, Jesse, is like you look at some of the names that we've like rattled off, right? Chip Kelly, former head coach, Ole's been a coordinator, obviously here for a minute, but you also look at kind of that next generation of the Rob Leonards, of guys like these are guys, Patrick Graham, that's going to be a head coach one day. Like, Pat Graham's going to be a head coach in the NFL. Rob Leonard is going to be a defensive coordinator at some point in the NFL. So the fact that if you're Pete Carroll, you're accumulating this talent, like that to me, it feels like the way that it's supposed to be done, right? Like you put your people in position to succeed, you give them the resources to be really good at their job, and then hopefully at some point after there's been a lot of wins, you let them fly the coop and let them kind of grow and flutter their wings as well. But it's been, like I said, from the outside looking in, it's been really fun to kind of see how things have kind of matriculated, how things have kind of evolved. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Like this is going to be, I feel like you and I say this every year, it's going to be a really fast off season. Like there's going to be a lot of things coming our way. Like I was telling my wife this morning, I was like, man, like kind of on my to-do list over the next week or two, like I got to figure out when the off-season program starts. Like all these things are going to happen just like that. Like we're literally going to be off to the combine in a week and a half. So like everything is happening.
It's crazy.
And it's going to be blast. It really is like such a fun time of the year. Like obviously the best 18 weeks, whatever it is the regular season. But this kind of portion, like this pre-draft portion, is pretty darn fun too. But one thing that I have to discuss, Jesse, that provided me, outside of the birth of the beautiful baby girl that is happy and healthy and eating and keeping me on my toes, one of the moments that provided me with such joy, like genuine joy, surprise, because again, like I'm over the past 6 weeks completely out of the loop on almost everything, right? Our friend Eric Allen is now Pro Football Hall of Famer Eric Allen, and that is just like, that is so cool. Like I am so like I was talking to like
awesome.
I was texting like a bunch of the guys here in the studio like leading up to that week, and I was like, hey, like I don't want to overstep, and like I don't know like what the process is for EA, but like is it I want to like text him good luck and everything, and so. Like yes, like he would love to, get all the positive vibes going, and so, I texted him good luck, and I'm just like, keeping my fingers crossed. And it was Thursday, right? We're literally putting the baby to bed, and keep in mind, right? Like I'm out of the loop. I get the push notification. Shout out our friend Logan because I get those pushes, and it just says Eric Allen, and I just had like such this this pure moment of like joy, excitement, and it was just like, man, like we talked about it a bunch. You and I have like said the same thing over and over, just like everyone in this building has. Like, not only is Eric Allen a Hall of Fame football player, he's a Hall of Fame human being. Like, I could sit here for an hour and talk about all the incredible little moments that EA and I have shared. I can talk about all the incredible things that he's done for me, for our staff. Like, and now the fact that he's going to get to wear one of those snazzy jackets here in a few months, like, I just was like blown away, just so stoked. And, you know, it's interesting too, where you look at how small that class was also. Like, it's just, I think it just speaks to him and kind of his time, you know, like it was kind of his time to go and to get in there. But man, at the end of the day, just so cool for EA, man. And I couldn't be happier for him.
Heck yeah, man. Was so fired up though, you know, to see it happen. And like you said, like there's so many stories you can share about like interaction with him. But like to me, as you were talking, I was just sitting kind of thinking and like, look, we know Marcus Allen is in a class of his own in terms of just presence, but EA has that like infectious personality like Marcus Allen does. You know, anytime you're around EA, you're just like, man, like puts you in a good mood.
Yeah.
Always goes out of his way to like come over and say what up. And like, it isn't just a simple like in passing, oh, hey, how's it going? Like, no, it comes like he comes by and like has a genuine conversation with you. And like, you're sitting back thinking like, this is EA.
Yeah.
Like, who the heck am I? What's he talking to me for? You know, and I've seen him do that with so many different people, you know, not only around the facility, but on game day and all those different things. And I remember one time, like I'll tell this little story. We're in the elevator going down post game. One time, I wish I could remember which game it was, but we're sitting in there with EA and just talking about, you know, Hall of Fame and everything like that and the possibility of it. And obviously, like, look, he wanted this to happen. He was like kind of getting a little beat up about it, but he was like, man. He's like, if I get that gold jacket, he's like, I'm going to be wearing that thing everywhere. You're going to be tired of seeing this thing on me. He's going to be like, I'm that guy that's like walking around and like, hey, what do you think about this jacket? Like, this is a Hall of Fame jacket, you know? And so it was like, it was just cool seeing the excitement out of him then. And so I can only imagine that night when he finally gets the news, just like, I guess just like a sigh of relief from obviously him, but all of us too, you know? And just like you said, man, to sum it up, like Hall of Fame dude, Hall of Fame player, like Hall of Fame in every sense of the word. So like it was just cool to be able to see that. And I can't wait to see him go in and hear his speech and just see everybody, like see him get the love that he deserves because he waited way too long. I can only imagine the heartbreak and sitting there wondering like, am I good enough? When like clearly he was. It was just like, you just gotta wait, but I'm so fired up for the guy.
Yeah, I mean, look, to be honest, like he's a hell of a speaker too, right? So like that speech is going to be awesome. Like this is a guy like clearly EA is comfortable addressing the masses, right? He's been on TV forever. He's done so much stuff with all of us. Like this is a guy who is very comfortable in telling a story and telling his story. So yeah, man, it is going to be so much fun to kind of see him get that moment. Gosh, when is that? Is that August, right? Hall of Fame game? That's typically when they do it.
Yeah, Hall of Fame game.
I wonder.
It'll be in August. Yeah.
I wonder if they send the old silver and black out there for that game. Makes sense, right?
That'd be pretty dope, actually. Yeah.
I wonder if there's like a rule though with what first year head coach. I don't know if you can play in that game. Maybe, possibly.
Didn't McDaniels?
Yeah, I think I'm just saying that.
McDaniels,
yeah, you're right. You're right. I take it.
Year.
I take it back. I take it back. Yeah, because McDaniels did go for. Yeah, they played in that game too. Yeah, it's going to be
which it actually kind of helps a first year coach. Yeah. You get that extra. The extra game. You report a little early. I know the players probably don't like it. But.
Yeah, I mean, well, like I was joking with some guys downstairs. Like this is going to be another one of those years where we have that extra week of the offseason program. You have that extra week of training camp. Like you're just gonna like we talked about it. It's going to be a really fast offseason. Like we're going to look up and just be like, oh shoot, like here we go. Time to rock. But it's going to be a blast, and we're all really excited. Before we get out of here, though, as is tradition, I got to crack an ice cold brewski, and there is no thought that had to be put into this one. I'm cracking this ice cold bruchacho, this ice cold Coors Light for the great Jesse Merrick, for Isaiah, for Angelo, for our back end crew here in the studio. Like again, you guys crushed it. Domination on the UFR airwaves over the past couple weeks as I've been gone. And it was funny because like before I left, and Isaiah will speak to this, we had a lot of plans in place, right? Because, you know, just the time of the year that I was departing, like it was a time of this could happen or that could happen or this could happen or that could happen. So we had all these plans. And I have to give everyone credit because you guys didn't miss a beat. There was no like confusion, like there was no like, oh, this show feels kind of out of place. Like everyone did such a great job. so stoked that we put you guys kind of in the big seat to keep it warm. And man, it was just it was a lot of fun to kind of, again, be a fan for a little bit and listen and to see someone else and hear someone else do it and put their own spin on it. And yeah, man, you guys did a great job. And if I have another baby coming up, which I think I'm on pause for a little bit. You guys will for sure get the call back. But yeah, man, a sincere, genuine thank you to all you guys, because it was great. And yeah, I know we're gonna do a lot of fun stuff this offseason, but this little chapter is over. But I know there's more to come, and it's gonna be a blast, dude.
Heck yeah, man. Look, it was so much fun. Like you said, there was no shortage of things to talk about. And there were a couple of times where we were coming in, we're like, all right, what's going to happen? What are we talking about today? And then obviously, like, MD and company provided us with plenty to talk about. It's always fun. And so, like you said, man, like, shout out to the whole crew back there. Shout out to Isaiah back in the booth too, man. Like, you guys all made it so easy on me to be able to step in and kind of keep this thing on the rails while Eddie was on daddy duty. Man.
Yes. And everyone in my back at the home front is very appreciative that you guys gave me the daddy duty time. And the boss is very happy. It was a lot of fun to spend some time, a lot of time actually, with both the little kiddos. And yeah, man, it was a good time to be away. It was good to kind of like hit that reset button again. And I think like also I talked about earlier, have a chance to like hear someone else do it, right? Because like I think, especially during the course of the season and the way that last season went, like there is that element of like just repetition. You're like, gosh, okay, what is week 11 is like week 12, which is like week 13. So like to hear someone else kind of put their flavor on it was really, really cool. And yeah, man, it was a blast. And we talk about it like we're just off to the races now. Like we are about 10 days out from the combine, which is crazy. We'll come back from the combine, and then I think we're like 2 weeks out from the start of free agency. Like we are just rocking. Like we are gonna have so much to do. And I appreciate you, Jesse, because you're on vacation right now. You did not have to hop on,
dude. It's all good
to give us a few minutes. But I know you're not working today, and you're not going to work tomorrow, which is great. But for the final time for this little chapter, 30 seconds of plugs. What do you got cooking on when you return from the beautiful mountains that you're in right now?
Yeah, hey, look, when I return, obviously we're going to be, heavy on all the offseason news as it pertains to you guys and all the moving and shaking that Pete and company do. Because, look, Pete did note that there's going to be, a lot of moves, a lot of turnover. There has been early on throughout his tenure everywhere, and I think SpyTech and them are going to be cooking. So we're going to be covering a ton of that. Obviously going real heavy on the Golden Knights as well as they try and, get things rolling when they come back from the Four Nations break too. But honestly, man, like, me, I'm a draft nerd. Like, I love the offseason. As much as I do love the regular season, and that is my favorite time of the year, like a very close second is the offseason in the NFL. So I'm going to be diving as much as I can into all of that and sinking my teeth into the combine, the draft, all the projections and everything like that. So make sure you guys are tuning in, checking it all out on News 3 with me and my guy, Brian.
And shameless plug alert, make sure you are rocking with the Raiders NFL Draft podcast, which I believe episode 2 just went out yesterday, right, Isaiah? Yep, I'm getting a thumbs up for episode 2. Our guys, Rhett Lewis and Bucky Brooks, do an awesome job. This is year 3 of them doing their thing, and they are just crushing it, right? Like we talk about, EA is like kind of that perfect example of like every time you talk to them, you learn a little bit. Same with Bucky and Rhett. Like they do such an incredible job at diving into everything in the draft. And in our case, right, selfishly for us, putting a little silver and black spin on everything that they see, obviously in the All-Star games, the Combine coming up. Like those dudes are dialed in, and we are very, very lucky to have them as part of the team for the pre-draft process. So on that note, I am back. My throat is going to be sore tomorrow. I can feel it. I got about 700 emails I got to check today. We got a lot of things to figure out. We're diving in. We're attacking it with a great energy, and I could not be happier to be back. So, for Eddie Paskal, friend of the program, we need to like elevate you past like friend of the program. I don't know.
Hey, I'll take it, man.
Whatever it is, I'll brainstorm some stuff. Friend of the program, Jesse Merrick. Everyone else here at Silver and Black Productions, thank you for hanging out with us. And we will see you guys next week. Man, right back into it. Same time, same place for our next episode of Upon Further Review.